Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. We are just a couple of weeks away from launch now, Gamescom is this week, and to keep the hype train going, Bungie just released the official launch trailer for Destiny 2. It's pretty awesome, we get a look at some pretty sweet gear, some cutscenes too, and of course the typical look at some new weapons. If you haven't seen it, then I will be sure to link it down below for you guys to check out. But as I always do, in this video we're going to be breaking it down, dissecting the trailer, and talking about all the most interesting points. Also, apologies for the delay getting this out to you guys. I'm actually in Germany right now for Gamescom, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm a little bit slower than usual. But either way, if you guys do enjoy this, then a like will be super appreciated, and be sure to comment down below, let me know what you guys think, and if you saw anything I might have missed, then similarly let me know. And finally, I also have a PS4 Pro giveaway happening right now, so if you guys haven't entered that, I've linked that down below. If you guys want to enter for a chance to win, so you can play Destiny 2 on PS4 Pro, then definitely hit that up. But if we dive straight into the trailer, the very first thing we get is a look, of course, at what I'm going to assume is Ghoul's kind of big command ship, his warship. We actually see a rather interesting character walking in behind him, speaking to him here. This character, thanks to the subtitles on the Instagram post, is actually the Consul. We've heard him referenced various different times in the past, but we've actually now got a face for him, a rather ugly face. He's got this kind of cool black and red gear, but of course the Consul is another Cabal, someone that is either mentoring Ghoul or someone that he's kind of confiding in, but either way, these two together discussing their plans. And then the kind of most exciting thing, or kind of worrying thing at the same time, is the fact that out the ceiling, out this kind of crazy chamber, comes the speaker. Now, if you guys have played the beta, then following the first story mission, the speaker, of course, goes missing. One of the parts where you get around to where his room is effectively, Ikora Rey then goes off to try and find him, and, you know, at the time there were kind of speculations as to whether he's, you know, he's left to kind of betray us or whether he was kidnapped. And of course, the Edge article the other week then actually kind of shed some light on this, and now we see the cinematic, we get to know for sure that the speaker is being held against his will in a pretty kind of brutal looking chamber. I don't know whether they are kind of just keeping him there as prisoner, whether they're trying to sort of sap his light. We're not entirely sure exactly at this stage what is going on here, but either way, he is being held captive. So not only do we have, you know, Ghoul to contend with, and now we have a means to fight back because he's destroyed our city, but he's also now holding the speaker. So I think it's fair to say Speaker's probably on our side, but whether or not he'll give up and kind of buckle under the pressure and then give away any secrets, we'll of course have to wait and see. But moving on from there, we then get to seeing, of course, you know, seeing the ships flying in, seeing the city being destroyed. The character that's narrating in the background is actually a character called Sloane. We don't know who that is just yet, but according to the Grimoire and whatnot, then she is a kind of Vanguard scout, so probably someone we'll encounter throughout the story. We then get a look at some cutscenes we've seen before, but more interestingly, we then jump over to this scene here. This is a pretty big looking Cabal warship. That is, of course, the Shard of the Traveler in the background. In the European Dead Zone, it is supposedly where we'll be going to, or, you know, at least in the vicinity is where we'll be going to restore some of our powers. There are these shards dotted around the European Dead Zone. Supposedly they're kind of polluting the rivers and the kind of area around it, but it is of distinct interest to the Cabal, so this big warship looks rather ominous over the top of that. We then get a few shots of the last safe city, or not really safe anymore, the city being destroyed, civilians trying to pull themselves together, some Guardians walking through here. Interestingly, this shot here, we get a look at some more gear, some weapons. The weapon that the Hunter is holding, I mentioned in the previous video that we saw when we got to see the competitive Crucible trailer, there was this interesting kind of revolver-looking hand cannon, which at the time we thought could have been a new exotic. However, when you look at it in the Hunter's hand here, you can see it actually has a shader applied to it. And from what we've seen in the beta, it appears that you can't put shaders on exotics. Now, whether, of course, that is something that we can do in the final game, we don't know for sure. But at this stage, that hand cannon is now starting to look a little bit more like something you might just sort of see from a vendor, something else like that. So, potentially not an exotic, but still seeing again, of course, in the back of the Warlock is that Viced auto rifle. Interestingly, in this next scene, we see a Dead Orbit cape on the back of the Hunter. We see a future Walcott hand cannon being wielded by the Titan, and we see that katana-like blade we've seen in various different trailers from the Hunter. There seems to be kind of sword stances, as I've mentioned in the past, for the different kind of blades. I'm not entirely sure whether they are linked to classes or whether they're linked to blades, so whether if you wield, say, the katana, it's held slightly differently to that knight broadsword, or whether it's actually based around whether you wield it when you're a Hunter, Titan, or Warlock. Either way, really cool looking weapon. They have said there'll be a good variety of swords in Destiny 2, so that in itself definitely excites me. They've always been one of my favourite weapons, something I'm super excited to kind of test out and get some more of them in Destiny 2, so can't wait to find out more about that. Of course, jumping over to the front section, we get to see the Warlock in some Dead Orbit gear. This is actually quite similar to some gear we saw for the Titan in the Crucible trailer. Again, it's got this kind of netting over the shoulder pad, so it looks more sort of like PvE focused gear, in my opinion. Doesn't look quite as sort of sleek as the typical competitive gear, but either way, looks pretty cool. Moving on from there, there's then a cutscene with some of the characters running together through what I'm going to assume is some rubble in the Lost City. We of course see Hawthorne here, and you can see on her back, that is the quote-unquote handbag that you get from the Collector's Edition, her sort of messenger bag, so to speak. She's wielding a sniper here, Cade is of course in the mix, but interestingly what I want to turn my attention to is the armour being worn by this Warlock. That looks remarkably like Vex gear. That looks kind of similar to the Vex helmet that Titan used to wear from the Vault of Glass, a little bit different, a little bit more kind of outlandish. But, of course, again, something we haven't seen before. Whether that is exotic, I mean, it definitely looks pretty outlandish and not kind of typical sort of basis point for working out whether things are exotics in the past have been, if it looks crazy, it generally speaking is an exotic. But at this stage, we don't know for sure, but that is definitely some really, really cool looking gear. If there are Vex-themed armor sets, I know the focus in Destiny 2 is, of course, the Cabal, but we will be encountering the Vex. We've seen it in various different situations, in some of the lost sectors, in some of the other kind of missions and whatnot, so hopefully there are some sort of race-themed sets. Then jumping forward a little bit, we then get a look at this scene here. Now this looks remarkably like a destroyed entrance to the Vault of Glass. Of course there is that very familiar door. Now that is of course a Vex type door, so it could just be a structure in a different location, but it does look remarkably similar. That being said, we do of course know the planets we'll be going to, so if we're not necessarily returning directly to Venus, this could just be another similar Vex type structure, and we only see 2 Guardians jumping in here, so it definitely doesn't look to be like a raid encounter. Now this section here, we actually get a look at some more rather interesting gear. The gear that the Titan is wearing in the background looks remarkably similar to some gear that was being worn by a Warlock in the competitive Crucible trailer. I likened it to, say, the Speaker's gear in that it looks kind of very minimalistic, white, clean lines and whatnot. And the theme of the Titan's gear definitely seems to match that. Of course, look at the Warlock's helmet. It's got this interesting carbon fiber, either a shader applied to it, or that is, of course, just the default color scheme for it. But again, more gear that we haven't seen before, so we can add that to the list of new stuff that we want to, of course, acquire in game. Next up in this scene here, we see a Titan running forward with what I'm going to assume is an SMG. It's got that kind of compact nature to it, something that looks very similar to other SMGs we've seen. But if you look at the form factor of it, the color scheme, it looks similar to Haka design. So that could well be our first look at a Haka SMG. And he is, of course, at this time running alongside a tank. Now, speaking of tanks, we then get a look at a few familiar vehicle types. We see an Interceptor driving forward here. So that is, of course, confirmation that they too are returning. We have seen the tanks in the background before, but we still haven't seen any kind of situation specifically where a Guardian jumps into it. So I'm pretty sure that at some point during the campaign we'll be able to pilot or drive those tanks, but at this stage we're still not 100% on that. And of course, jumping forward from there, we get a look at the Pikes, but we've seen them in the inverted Spire Strike from the beta, so that isn't exactly anything new. Then if we rewind quickly and take a look at this section here, we get a look at another new weapon. Now I'm not entirely sure what weapon type this is specifically. Part of it looks like it fires like a fusion rifle, another part makes it look like it fires like a scout rifle, but interestingly there is a segment here when the center of the Minotaur is shot and then it explodes and destroys some of the kind of nearby enemies. Now at first I thought this could have been exotic, however if you pay attention to the most recent Edge magazine, there will say one thing that wasn't present in the beta was the intended functionality for the energy weapons. One of the main things to note with those is that if you destroy an energy type shield with the matching energy type weapon, then the shield effectively explodes in a big AoE explosion, in turn inflicting damage or even killing nearby enemies. So this could well just be a correctly matched elemental weapon with a shield, in turn dishing out that energy-based explosion. So a little bit hard to say at this stage. It does have this interesting carbon fiber look to it, this interesting scope, so it could be a special weapon, but at this stage we don't know for sure. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. The very last thing I want to draw your attention to is this final scene here. It's during the kind of outro to the trailer. And to begin with, when I saw this, I thought it was a sort of a perspective shot because at the front we have a Hobgoblin, we then have a couple of kind of Guardians jumping in. When you actually look at their kind of positioning, it actually makes it look like this is just genuinely a very, very big Hobgoblin. Now bear in mind the narrative focus for the main game is the Cabal, so I'd be willing to bet this is probably in some kind of lost sector. Could be one of those bosses you dive deep down. Of course, if you look at the actual area around, it looks like you are kind of in some sort of cauldron further down, so it could well be something we encounter either as a strike boss or just generally as a boss in a lost sector, which then leads to some treasure. But either way, that is pretty much it. It of course rounds out by reminding us that you can of course pre-order to get the Cold Heart Exotic, but for the time being, that is pretty much all the exciting stuff from the launch trailer. I do still hope we get a live action trailer. There is still that tease from the Activision CEO, so I feel like we'll probably be getting that at some point, maybe on the run up to launch, but for the time being, that is pretty much it. I am, as mentioned, at Gamescom this week, so I will be hoping to check out, see if there's anything new for Destiny 2. I don't think there's a great deal new, but I will keep you guys up to date if there is, of course, any additional news. But for the time being, that's it from me. If you guys saw anything that I didn't mention, then by all means, let me know in the comments down below. But until then, thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.